Today we're going to be going over fractions on a number line. So at the end of today we will be able to identify and represent fractions on a number line, compare and order fractions using a number line, and analyze the relationship between fractions and their positions on a number line. But before we dive in, let's review. So what exactly is a fraction? A fraction is a part of a whole. A fraction is made up of a denominator, the bottom number, and the numerator, which would be the top number. So let's take a look. So let's look at 3/4. We know that 3 is the numerator and that 4 is the denominator. So how else can we look at fractions? So let's say we have a cake and we cut it into 4 equal slices. Let's pretend that these are equal. And we eat 3 of the 4 slices. So a part of the whole is now missing. So 3 pieces out of the 4 original pieces are now missing. So 3, the part out of the whole 4, are missing. So now that we have reviewed fractions, let's take a look at number lines. So what exactly is a number line? A number line is a line that shows numbers in order and can show partial numbers in between each whole number. So let's create a visual. So here's our number line, and let's go from 0 to 1 to 2. So as we see the number line, we see that as we go from left to right, the numbers get greater. And you'll see that as we continue on in the lesson. So from left to right, it gets greater. So 0, 1, and 2. So let's dive into the lesson today. So let's draw a number line going from 0 to 1. Now we're going to create a halfway point. So what is exactly is half of 1? A half. So we're going to make 1/2. And then we can break up the number line into however many pieces. The denominator will kind of tell us how many pieces we want to break it up into. So let's say we want to break it up into 4 equal pieces. So we know that a half of 4 will be 2 over 4. So 2/4. So we're going to start with 1/4, and then we're going to have our 2/4, and then we're going to have 3/4, and then our 1 whole, which would be 4/4. So how many equal parts go into the number 1 in this case? Well, we can look at how many parts we've broken it up into. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 equal parts will make up 1 whole in this case. So now would be a time where I would have students kind of draw a number line on their mini whiteboards or on a piece of paper, and they would label from 0 to 1, and then they would also label the correct fractions. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 1 whole, because we're breaking it up into 4 equal pieces. So now we can ask ourselves, what fraction is halfway between 1/4, no, not 1/4, 1/2 and 1 whole? So remember, we're looking at the right side because 1/2 is over here and 1 whole is right here. So we're completely ignoring this left side. So when we look at 1/2 and 1 whole, we see that 3/4 is between 1/2 and 1 whole. So another thing we can ask ourselves is which fraction is bigger, 1/4 or 3/4? So remember, let's take a look at the left side. So remember, our left side is the smaller numbers and our right side is the greater numbers. So 1/4 is right next to 0 and 3/4 is right next to 1 whole. So we know that 3/4 is bigger, just how far right it is on the number line. And 3 is greater than 1, our numerator. So back to what we were saying, you can break a number line into however many equal parts. The denominator decides how many sections we make between 0 and 1. So let's say we have the number 3/6. So we know that we need to break our number line into 6 equal pieces. So 0 and 1 and 3/6 is half of 1 whole in this case because 3 is half of 6. So we're already going to mark our 3/6, and then we know that we need 1/6 and then 2/6. Then we have our 3/6, our halfway point, and then we need 4/6 and then 5/6. So we're trying to mark 3/6 on the number line. So we're going to count, we're going to start at 0 and count all the way to 3/6. 1, 2, 3. So we jumped and counted 3 spaces to land on 3/6. Notice how we jumped 3 spaces and 3 is our numerator. You'll see that that is a pattern. No matter what your numerator is and how many times you're trying to jump to that spot, you will jump however many times as your numerator is equal to. So that would apply if we were trying to find 5/6, we would jump 5 spaces. If we were trying to find 4/6, we would jump 4 spaces. So, a number line in fractions also applies to improper fractions as well, but before we go into that, what exactly is an improper fraction? So an improper fraction is kind of just a scary fraction. It looks weird and it looks wrong. So we know that 4/4 is 1 whole because 4/4 is equal to 1. So what exactly does 5/4 equal to? So we know that we have our 1 because 4/4 is 1. So now that we have 5/4, we know that 5 minus 4 is equal to 1 because we've already taken out our 1 whole. So now we have 1 left over 4. We keep the denominator. So basically, when you have an improper fraction, you are subtracting the numerator from the denominator. So we're subtracting, or that's backwards, the denominator from the numerator if it's an improper fraction. So say that this 5 was a 6, you would take 4 from the 6 and you'd be left with 2, so then the 2 would become your numerator. So let's plot this on a number line. So we're going to start at 0 and we're going to give ourselves some wiggle room, so we're going to plot 2 on the number line. So we know our halfway point will be 1 because 1 is half of 2. And we're breaking this up into 4 equal pieces. Let's take a look back at our denominator. It's 4, so we're going to be plotting this into 4 equal pieces. So we have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And then we have our 1 whole, which would be 4/4. And then we're going to take that 1, and then 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4. And we're trying to plot 5/4 on the number line. So remember, we can jump however many spaces as our numerator, so 5. Let's see if that gives us 1 1/4 on this number line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we land on 1 1/4. So we were correct about 1 1/4 being the correct answer. So let's take a look at a kind of a scarier improper fraction. It's just a little bit bigger, kind of scary. So let's say we have 8/4. So we know that 4/4 is 1 whole, but 4 can go into 8 2 times. So 8/4 is technically equal to the whole number 2. So plotting this will be a little less work, a little less scary. So let's create our number line. We're going to go from 0 to 2 because we know that our whole number that we're aiming for is 2. So our halfway point, which is 1 because 1 is half of 2. And then we're breaking it back up into 4 equal pieces. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 1 or 4/4, 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4, and then 2 or 1 4/4. So let's plot 8/4 on the number line. Remember, we can count and jump, or we could just go straight to 2, but we're going to double check our work to make sure that it's 2. So let's start at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So when we just count and jump 8 times, we get to the number 2. So we're correct about 8/4 being equal to the whole number 2. So now I would have a student activity just to kind of review and make sure that the students are understanding the concept and hopefully getting some knowledge. So either this would be individual work or it would be kind of like a partner practice, just so they could kind of bounce ideas and thoughts off of another person. And maybe if they were unsure about an answer, they could get a second opinion. But since there are no students, I will be completing the activity myself. So let's say that we have 3/4, and we want to mark that on a number line. So we're going to create our number line, and we're going to start at 0 and go to 1 because we're not quite at a whole. So our halfway point, since we're breaking it up into 4 equal pieces, will be 2/4. And then we know that we have 1/4 and 3/4. So we're trying to mark 3/4 on the number line. So we're going to count the 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. And we land right at 3/4. So then our second problem will be place 5/6 on a number line. So kind of the same steps. We create our number line, go 0 to 1. Our halfway point, 3 is half of 6. So 3/6 will be our halfway point, and then we'll create 1/3, 2/3, 3, I'm saying 2/3, 1/6, 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, and then 5/6, and then our 1 whole, which would be 6/6. So kind of the same process as what we just did in number 1. We're going to start at 0 and count to 5 to get 5/6 on the number line and plot it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when we count and jump 5 times, we end up with 5/6 on the number line. So our third student activity problem would be place 6/4 on a number line. So now we're working with an improper fraction again. So let's kind of solve this before we break it onto the number, or plot it onto the number line. So we know that we have 1 whole because obviously 4 out of 4 is 1 whole, or 4/4 is 1 whole. So 6 minus 4 will be 2. So we will have 2 left over, and then we keep the denominator. So when we are plotting, we are going to be looking for the number 1 2/4. So let's create our number line. And we're going to give ourselves some room because we know that we have more than 1 whole. So we're going to have our halfway point as 1 because remember what we said, 1 is half of 2. So we're breaking this up into 4 equal pieces again. So we're going to start with 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And then we have our 1 whole, which would be 4/4. And then we're going to bring that whole number 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4, and then 2 or 1 4/4. So we can either just plot our number 1 2/4, but we're going to start at 0 and count to make sure that we are at the right number, or we have the right number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when we jump and count 6 times, we end up at the correct answer that we had originally, which was 1 2/4. So the next problem is kind of a word problem, and if I had students at the moment, I would ask them to kind of create a number line and then show their work. So if you see a number line divided into 4 equal parts and there's a dot on the 3rd mark, which fraction is shown? Explain how you know. So I would have them create their number line. So let's say we're on question 4. And then if you see a number line divided into 4 equal parts and there's a dot on the 3rd mark, which fraction is shown? So we know that we're going to draw our number line. And we're breaking it into 4 equal parts because it says 4 equal parts. So 0 to 1. And then half of 4 is 2. So we have 2/4 as our halfway mark. And then we'll have the 1/4. So 1/4, 2/4, and then 3/4. And the question asks, if you see a number line divided into 4 equal parts and there's a dot on the 3rd mark, which fraction is shown? So we're going to start at 0 and we're going to count to 3 because there's a dot on the 3rd mark. So 1, 2, 3. So when we count and jump to the third mark, we'll see that 3/4 is the fraction that has the dot on it. So basically, I would want the students to show the number line and then kind of write that as a description. We count and jump to the third mark, which would be 3/4. So that is the end of the lesson. I hope that they could get a brief glimpse into fractions on a number line and also improper fractions on a number line. And hopefully that the student activity was enough review to kind of help get their brains flowing and help them kind of solve the problems themselves.